In this video, we're going to analyze an English argument by translating it into symbolic form and then analyzing that symbolic form with the truth table. So the argument I have written up here: if James solved the problem correctly, then James obtained the answer to number 2. Our second premise is James obtained the answer to number 2. Our conclusion then is that James solved the problem correctly. So the first step to analyzing this symbolically is to translate this into symbols. So we need to have symbols to make this work. So let's say P is equal to James solved the problem correctly. And let's let Q equal James obtained the answer to number 2. So to translate this, then we can come over to this side and rewrite this whole statement. So if James solved the problem correctly, so if P, then Q is our first premise. Our second premise then is James obtained the answer to number 2. That's just Q. Our conclusion is James solved the problem correctly. So that's just P. Now this is a relatively simple argument, but let's go ahead and make a truth table to simplify this and analyze whether or not it's a valid argument. So our truth table, we only have 2 variables. So our truth table is only going to have 2 variables, P and Q. So I will build it over here. And now we want to make sure that we have a column for each premise. So this is a column for premise 1, a column for premise 2, and then a column for our conclusion. So our column for premise 1, I suppose I should write in here, is P implies Q. So true implies true is true. True implies false is false. Then false implies true is true. And false implies false is true. Our second column is just Q. So Q we can just copy over. So true, false, true, false. And then our conclusion column is just P. So we can copy that over as well. Now, the next step after we built this truth table is to find our critical rows. Again, remember our critical rows are those rows where all of our premises, in this case just 1 and 2, are true. So we only have the first row because this is 1 and 2 are true, and the third row because we have 1 and 2 true there as well. Now, these then are our critical rows. For the critical rows, the conclusions must be true for the argument to be sound. But in this case, our second critical row, the conclusion is false. Therefore, this is not a sound argument or an invalid argument. And because of that, then we have the situation where we have 2 premises that are true, but our conclusion is false. Therefore, we've identified the situation where we could have both of our premises be true, but a conclusion be false. So this is what makes an unsound argument.